what prominent women in Japanese politics are there right now currently? One is someone we've talked about quite a bit on the show before, Sanae Takaichi. She has a rather interesting nearly moment of history where, as I say, she came very close to becoming Japan's first prime minister, which would have been quite that was her would-be Margaret Thatcher moment. It would have been shattering the glass ceiling, and it would have been quite a big, interesting moment in Japanese politics to see. As I say, didn't happen. The reason being that was she initially was the front runner in the election to become the head of the LDP and subsequently prime minister, as the LDP was the government at the time before the last election. She was the front runner running against Ishiba. But what happened is that essentially the third candidate fell out, and I believe he was more of a moderate, whereas Sanae is a little bit more of the Abe, more conservative faction. And so what happened was when this moderate candidate dropped out, the votes went more to Ishiba, who's a little bit of an outsider, less Abe. And so he sort of came in through the middle and overtook Sanae. From her point of view, very disappointing. And she failed to become prime minister. However, she's still a very prominent figure within the LDP. She's still within parliament. She still makes the news and makes statements fairly regularly. She's, as I say, quite prominent and is a big figure within the Abe faction, although the Abe faction is not as powerful as they were before the most recent election in 2024, and their reputation has been hurt a bit by things like the slush fund scandal. However, it's not impossible to imagine a scenario in the not-too-distant future where if, say, for example, Ishiba was to have a very difficult election this year in the House of Councillors, he has had some successes recently, but if things would start going badly for him, perhaps he would have a scandal, or if he would have a very bad election, if he were to struggle, as he's currently leading a minority government, to get a coalition or get votes in from different parties to get legislation through, his legitimacy and his position could be diminished, and it's not entirely impossible to imagine in the very near future, even before we have a general election in Japan, that there could be a new LDP leader. I'm not predicting that, of course. It would require a number of things to happen, but it's not impossible. And were that to happen, Sanae, as the second place and the previous front runner and a very prominent person, would be in quite a position to challenge if she were to still want that. And so it's not at all impossible to imagine if the right consequence of events were to happen, that she could become the leader of Japan and Japan's first female prime minister. It's entirely possible. But as I say, Ishiba is able to get legislation through at the minute, and he's not looking in any immediate danger at the moment. But, stranger things have happened in Japanese politics, and we'll just have to watch out and see if she ever challenges again and what happens to Ishiba when he's not to wish his time up. But, it would be interesting to see if he were to leave, hypothetically, what would happen, and if she still has aspirations in that respect. But yeah, she's an interesting person to think about as a prominent Japanese female politician. There also, I think it's worth thinking about, two female party leaders in Japan at the moment, so also very prominent in terms of Japanese politics, of those with seats in the lower house, the House of Representatives. One is Tomoko Tamura. She's the head of the Japanese Communist Party, JCP, and that's Japan's oldest party, I believe. And she's been the leader since 2024, so quite recent, elected in as the leader of the Japanese Communist Party. And she's the party's first female chair. Now, as I say, she's only been in a very short time, but unfortunately, it's perhaps been a bit disappointing so far for her, or she's not had a good start. As she had somewhat of a disappointing election in 2024. The JCP had 10 seats. It's, like I say, a very old historic party, and they had a block of 10 seats, but they lost 2 of them and are now down to only 8. But as I say, it's very early days, and so it's interesting to think about what she will do and how her reign goes, and whether she can revitalise her party and maybe lead it to be more prominent. As the LDP is suffered and gone into minority government, and there's a lot of change within Japanese politics, entirely possible there could be an opportunity for her to do something with the JCP, revitalise its fortunes. So we'll have to see what happens from there. And there's also one more female leader of seats in the House of Representatives, and that's Mizuho Fukushima, who leads the SDP. They were once a prominent party, and have in the past been in government, but now they're down to just 1 seat, and she sits not within the House of Representatives but the House of Councillors. This is her second time, I believe, leading the party. She's held posts as Minister of consumer affairs, food safety, social affairs, and gender equality in the past in the government in 2009 in that administration. And she's previously been leader, as I said, from 2003 to 2013. So that's quite a long stretch of time as a party leader. And now she's regained the party in 2020. So she's another prominent leader. Now, of course, the party only has that one seat in the House of Representatives. But, she led the party at a time where it was doing rather better and had more seats. So again, although she's been at the helm for some time, it'll be interesting to see what she does with the party. So it's interesting that although Japan historically has not had too many women, it's now up to 16%, and you have two party leaders with women at the helm and leading parties. And so it'll be interesting to see if that happens for more and more parties as they elect women leaders, and to see what happens over time and how they get on.